Welcome to AngularJS Expressions tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll cover through what are expressions in AngularJS, and we'll also look into its context of evaluation and how it is applicable from statements or functions and filters perspective. And we'll also cover one-time binding in AngularJS Expressions. So what are expressions? Angular expressions are JavaScript-like code snippets that are usually placed in between double opening and closing braces. So here you could actually see the syntax how an expression can be defined in AngularJS. And as you see in the examples, it could be anything like sum of literals like 3 plus 5, or it could be like sum of two variables, or it could even refer to attribute of an object, etc. So coming to the context, in JavaScript, expressions are evaluated against the global window scope, but when it comes to Angular, expressions are evaluated against a scope object. So this makes Angular expressions not to have access to all global variables like window, document, or location, etc. And this is something intentionally designed so as to restrict the global variable scope, which actually helps in preventing accidental access to the entire global state, which could further help in avoiding many issues that way. And instead, if you really wanted to use the global scope, probably you could use alternatively some core Angular services like the dollar window and dollar location, etc., whenever required. Coming to evaluation, in Angular expressions are evaluated using $parse core Angular service, but those do not use JavaScript's eval function. And in JavaScript, trying to evaluate undefined properties might generate a reference error or type error. Whereas in Angular, expression evaluation forgives the evaluation to undefined or null instead of throwing errors. So, expression evaluations are primarily used for data binding in Angular. So, instead of having a lot of cluttered code to handle errors in Angular, it just simply forgives the evaluation without displaying anything. And coming to the statements or functions perspective to AngularJS expressions, it's only the ternary operator which can be used within an expression, but no other control flow statements are actually supported. So this actually is mainly designed for sticking to the MVC architecture, and so any application logic which should be defined, that should rather be defined into controllers, but not into the expressions or the view side. So if you actually wanted to define a conditional or a loop, or even to throw some error from a view expression, delegate the task to a JavaScript method instead. You also can't declare functions or create regular expressions from within AngularJS expressions. This is particularly to avoid complex model transformation logic inside templates. Such logic is better placed in a controller or in a dedicated filter where it can be tested properly. So if whenever one wants to run more complex JavaScript code, it should always be made into a controller method, and then that method can actually be called from view. So filters in AngularJS are useful to format the data before displaying it. And as you see here, the syntax, the expression is followed with a pipe symbol, and then the filter can be applied, which actually suggests Angular to format based on the provided filter. So in this example, we just gave a quick example saying like 25 is followed with a pipe symbol, and which is actually further followed with a currency keyword here. So this actually suggests Angular to apply currency filter or the number 25, and the final result would actually display something like this $25.00. And this is just a simple filter usage, which we covered in the slide. And detailed usage of filters in AngularJS shall be covered in later tutorials. Coming to one-time binding, in general, for observing any model mutations in Angular, Angular performs a digest cycle on the root scope, which would then further propagate throughout all child scopes. And thus, if there are any model mutations, corresponding expressions which are actually being watched by Angular would get updated. And this is how a normal binding would actually work within Angular expressions. But whenever an expression starts with two colons, it is considered as a one-time expression. And one-time expression will actually stop recalculating once they are stable, which actually means that after once the first digest happens, if the expression result is some finite value other than being undefined, it doesn't get recalculated multiple times. So if you could see in the example for normal binding, you could consider age is a temporary variable here, and within the braces, it is considered as a normal binding example. And whenever the digest loop runs, this age gets evaluated always, and that's how it would be finally displayed within the view. But if you actually specify it along with two colons before, so whenever the age gets some finite value, it would be just finalized, and as long as it is uh, not undefined, uh, digest loop wouldn't try to recalculate this. And this is the main benefit of the one-time binding. So this is the as this being the main purpose, this actually provides a way to create a binding that gets deregistered, and which further frees up resources once the binding is stabilized. So thus, reducing the number of expressions being watched makes the overall digest loop to be much faster, and also allows more information to be displayed at the same time. So with this, we actually covered usage of AngularJS expressions. Thanks for watching the video.